Good morning and welcome to the Fantasy Fallout Podcast with me, your humble host, Michael Schussler, head editor and content manager of whatsonsports.com. I would like to thank our sponsor, Sports Trading Systems, which allows you to trade sports like people out there trade stocks, literally make a living off of it. Service is super easy. You subscribe to it. They send you an email to your inbox and they tell you exactly what to bet, how much to bet, and when to do it. It's as easy as that. You don't even have to think. There's no emotion. There's no heart. It's all brains. SportsTradingSystems.com if you want to learn any more about that. So thank you to them. It's a Thursday. A beautiful Thursday. We have Thursday night football tonight, something that seems like we haven't had in a while. I guess the last time was on Thanksgiving. But finally, we're starting to get back into some sort of rhythm. I don't think there's any weird NFL games this week. Pretty sure there's a Thursday night. I know there's a Monday night football game between the Ravens and the Cleveland Browns. By the way, those Baltimore Ravens getting the win against the Dallas Cowboys on Tuesday night. And the last time that we spoke, I was saying that I needed a big game from J.K. Dobbins, and I got it. It came down to the wire. I mean, I needed 7.5 points, I said, and he had 68 yards. Okay. Throughout until the fourth quarter. So there's like 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter. It's that final drive. Ravens were already winning. I mean, the game was over. J.K. Dobbins only had 6.8 points because he had no receptions, so it was just 68 yards on the ground. And I was watching the game, with my friend who's in the same league with me. Both of us were make or break that week. If I won, I would actually get a first round bye and move into second place. If I lost, I would have dropped to seventh place because of how close this league was. Same thing with him. If he had won, he would have been maybe third or fourth seed. If he lost, he dropped to seventh. So he was out. And I mean, we're watching that game. We're both Ravens fans. We're cheering. We're happy that the Ravens are winning. J.K. Dobbins is getting these explosive runs. He's getting 30-yard runs. I think he had one 30-yard rush and another 20 plus. Every time he touches the ball, it's like this guy makes plays happen. It's disappointing that he didn't get the ball more. And that's what I've been saying, been saying that since the beginning of the year. He had 11 rushes for 71 yards and a touchdown. Gus Edwards, he looked good too. 7 for 101. And then, of course, Lamar Jackson. Back to looking like Lamar Jackson. He led the team in carries with 13, 94 yards and a touchdown. Actually had more rushing attempts than passing attempts. But you love to see the Ravens getting back on track. J.K. Dobbins punched that touchdown right at the end, the final play for the Ravens on the day, and that settled it. I made the playoffs. My friend didn't. Shout out to Nick Mack. I'm sorry, bud. I'm sorry. I know that was brutal. But hey, the best team won. And J.K. Dobbins, it should have happened earlier. That's what I'm saying. Like, it shouldn't have been that close. So, I'm a happy camper. I got a first-round bye in that league. Made the playoffs in all my leagues. Not to brag, I'm just saying. It's an exciting time. Fantasy playoffs. And speaking of that, as you can see on my list here for anyone who's watching at home, you can see the 5 best fantasy performances so far for 2020 is our first topic. And for this, I'm going to bring in the first guest that I've had on this show. And his name is Arvin Kamina. He is a writer on whatsonsports.com. He's got many excellent articles up there, as well as our entire team of writers. So that's whatsonsports.com, completely free. You can go there and check out a number of different articles on plenty of different platforms. On plenty of different topics in sports. So before I bring Arvin on, I just want to remind everyone, sportstradingsystems.com is our sponsor. Trade sports like you trade stocks. Get in on some winnings this year. All right. Arvin, welcome to the show. How you doing today, bud?
Very good. How you doing, Mike? Good morning to
Doing
you.
well. Yeah, I'm doing well, man. Like I said, that J.K. Dobbins touchdown, I'm still feeling it. Like yesterday, I was so happy. I went to bed happy that night, and it's been a it's been a week. I tell you already, but
Yeah,
I'm excited for Thursday night football. Finally getting that back, and I'm really excited to check out your article, which will be on the site later today. It's and if correct me if I'm wrong, but it's the five best individual fantasy performances that we've seen so far in 2020. Is that right?
that that is correct.
All right. You want to give us a little preview of what we got on that list?
Yeah, for sure. Just before I proceed, just to give you a heads up on how the scoring went,
Mhm.
fantasy wise. So for the quarterbacks, for the passing touchdown, it's 4 points each. For every 25 passing yards that he's made, it's one point. And if for the entire game he had a 300-yard passing game or more than that, so it's going to be three additional 3 point bonus. So
Okay.
for each interception, it's going to be -1.
Mhm.
So all right. So for the rushing touchdown, it's 6 points. For the rushing yards, it's zero point 0.1 points per yard. So
Yeah. So
and
pretty
again,
standard scoring there. Is it a point per reception? Half point, standard,
oh, there is a reception, a full point per reception.
full point PPR.
That's
All right, great.
PPR exactly.
All right, hit me.
All
Who?
right.
I think I have an idea of some of the guys who made it because there were some historical performances that we've seen this
It
year.
is. It
So,
is definitely. Let's start with number five. So number five, I got Derrick Henry from
mm,
the Tennessee Titans.
yep.
So I get so he in his game against the Houston Texans on week 6,
Mm.
he had 212 rushing yards, two rushing touchdowns, 52 receiving yards, and two receptions. So that sums up to 40.4 fantasy points.
Yeah, monster week from
So
Derrick
it
Henry. I mean,
is
yeah, we've come to expect this, right? I mean, like it's kind of it. It's an off week when Derrick Henry doesn't have 100 rushing yards. You know?
definitely. And so, at least he had a monster game that night.
Yeah, he did.
And it was if you had him in your fantasy team or at least in daily fantasy, it was a somewhat of a jackpot. You had a value, high value player for that game.
All right, Derrick
So
Henry at number five. What's number four?
number four is our reigning Super Bowl MVP, Patrick Mahomes.
The goat.
Yep,
Hmm.
he's running the goat. So he had three. This match was against the Baltimore Ravens. Your Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah, no, I remember that. Yeah, that was we.
Yep.
That was brutal. That was brutal to watch.
It is. So he had 385 passing yards, four passing touchdowns. So it was, a monster game again by
Yeah.
Mahomes. So 26 rushing yards, and he had himself a touchdown. So it
Yeah,
was,
we could not stop him at all. Like, I mean, no one's really able to ever stop Patrick Mahomes. I was really thinking. I mean, that was the game that I was most excited about coming into the season. I was like, oh yeah, Ravens Chiefs week 3. Like, this is AFC Championship preview, and
yeah,
did not go the way that I had thought it would. I mean, mostly this Ravens season has not gone quite the way that I had hoped. But anyway, all right. Yeah, so that one hurts a little bit, but hey, he's Patrick Mahomes. What are you gonna do? All right, what's number 3?
exactly. So number three, I got Aaron Jones of the Green Bay
Yeah.
Packers.
Hmm.
So this was on week 2. So it was like a statement game for Jones. So he had 168 rush yards, two rushing touchdowns, 68 receiving yards, and yeah, so he had one receiving touchdown with
Yep.
a total of four receptions for that game. So the total fantasy points that he had for against the Detroit Lions was 45.6
Mm.
fantasy points.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, he does that. He does that every year. It seems he has like one or two 40 plus 3 touchdown games. And what's crazy is that he hadn't topped 100 rushing yards since week 2, although he did last week against the Eagles, where he had 130 yards and a touchdown, which was his second best performance of the year. So I was actually surprised. I mean, like, I wasn't surprised when he dropped that monster game week 2. I was like, oh, here we go. Why didn't I take Aaron Jones? I took Josh Jacobs over Aaron Jones. I took Austin Eckler over Aaron Jones. Obviously, looking back, that was completely stupid. But yeah, I was kicking myself for not taking Aaron Jones. He hasn't had a week, without double-digit fantasy production that he's played in. But I was expecting to see, another monster performance from him, at least at some point. And maybe we still will as we get into the fantasy playoffs. But all right, Aaron Jones, he's always good for one or two breakout games. So who's number 2?
Number 2, believe it or not, it's the man who scored 4 touchdowns on week 8. That's Dalvin Cook of the Minnesota Vikings. So yeah, he had 163 rush yards, 3 of them touchdowns, 3 rushing touchdowns, 63 receiving yards, 1 receiving touchdown, and had 2 receptions. So that was crazy.
Dude, that guy is just an absolute monster. He's an absolute stud, and we knew this. We knew this coming in. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get Dalvin Cook in any of my leagues because I had 2 picks. I had 2 number 2, like I was picking second twice, and then I had the 3rd overall pick once. I went with Saquon in 2 leagues and Ezekiel Elliott in another. Looking back, though, I mean, God, I do love Saquon. He's, one of my favorite players in the league. Obviously, hindsight's 2020, but is Dalvin Cook, is he the number 1 overall pick next year?
I can see that, with his performance for the season. Yeah, he's going to be the number 1 pick.
And so that was in week 8, right? When he faced the Packers and he had 4 touchdowns. And over 200 total yards. Week 9 against Detroit, he had 206 rushing yards, like just pure rushing yards. So he's doing that in back-to-back weeks, like back-to-back 40-point performances. He's been absolutely insane. And kudos to everyone who took him over some of those other top projected running backs, especially like Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah,
all right.
Definitely.
So this has been Arvin's top 5 fantasy performances so far this year. We have Derrick Henry at number 5. We have, Patrick Mahomes' week 3 performance against the Ravens at number 4. Aaron Jones's week 9 monster showing against Detroit in week 2. Of course, we just went over Dalvin Cook's monster game in week 8 against the Packers. And I got to know. We know who number 1 is. It just happened. Historic performance. Hit me.
It is. Drum roll, please. There you go.
Yeah.
Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek Hill.
Kansas City Chiefs. So he had 269 receiving yards, 3 receiving touchdowns, 13 receptions for a whopping 57.9 fantasy points on week 12. So that
absolutely was just, insane. And he did it against the Buccaneers too. I guess they just decided not to give it safety help for Tyreek Hill. I mean, I don't know how with a defense as good as that and the preparation that they have. I mean, what Mahomes and the Chiefs want to do. They're going to target Tyreek Hill 13 times. And just an absolute monster performance. Didn't he set some record for the first half? I think did he have all 3 touchdowns in the first half maybe or something crazy that?
He did with 7 receptions for that to boot. So
absolutely insane.
It is.
But hey, thank you, Arvin. So this article is coming out later today on whatsonsports.com. Everyone out there, you can check it out. That's whatsonsports.com. Look out for this article by Arvin. And like I said, plenty of other great articles out there that'll be coming today. Arvin, thanks for joining me. Appreciate the information.
Thanks. My pleasure.
All right. I'll see you later, bud. Arvin's fun guy. Like I said, great articles on there. Whatsonsports.com. Every day we're pumping out new material. Okay. So that was all right. Those performances, they literally make or break weeks. I mean, if you had Tyreek Hill on your roster in week 12, there's no way that you should have lost, especially playing DFS. If you have Dalvin Cook almost every week, like that's how you win. Like it's just like Lamar Jackson last year. All right, if you don't play Lamar Jackson last year, then you're not going to win. And it seems like if you're not playing Dalvin Cook this year, or Tyreek Hill or Devontae Adams, you're not going to win. Now, that's not exactly true. And if you follow my advice on my DFS column that comes out every week, that'll be out later today as well on whatsonsports.com, you'll see that there is a way to generate real value from lower priced players. And that's what you really want to do, is get that 3x value, which really goes into my price to profit algorithm, which I can't give you all the secrets to, but that is the main component. So if you're able to justify spending $9,000, let's say, on Devontae Adams, you're going to need him to produce at least 27 fantasy points to return value. Now, that's something that happens often, but not every week. Follow my advice, whatsonsports.com, for more of that. All right, that was great, Arvin. Thank you. So next topic, Pro Football Focus came out with their highest graded rookie running backs of 2020. This is fascinating because rookie running backs are all the hype, right? They come out of college. I mean, everyone looks good in college. And then everyone's so excited about who they're drafted by in the NFL draft, what their role is going to be, which offense they're going to be in, how they're going to scheme to get open. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, obviously, was a first-round draft pick in fantasy drafts, and obviously in the real NFL draft, he was taken last by the Kansas City Chiefs. That instantly shot him up draft boards, and rightfully so, at least in theory. That hasn't exactly panned out, but I will break down Pro Football Focus's highest graded running backs of 2020. Here's what they have. They have Antonio Gibson at number 1, which I love because I've been about Antonio Gibson. I said at the beginning of the year that because Ron Rivera in training camp, now they had a very limited training camp. Everyone did because of COVID. But Ron Rivera said, this kid reminds me of Christian McCaffrey. That's all I needed to hear. That's all anyone needed to hear. Like, give me 50% of Christian McCaffrey with any running back, and I'll happily take it. Love Antonio Gibson. He gets the highest grade. Now, by the way, maybe I should break down like how this grading works for Pro Football Focus. From the research I've done, it's pretty much they grade every NFL player on every play on a scale of -2 to +2 using half-point increments. Now, that doesn't exactly make a lot of sense. It doesn't have to. All right, but the grades are based on context and performance, according to their Wikipedia page. And a 4-yard run that gains a first down after 2 or 3 broken tackles will receive a better grade than a 4-yard run on a 3rd and 5, where the ball carrier only gets 4 yards and doesn't get the first down and doesn't really break any tackles or do anything more than expected. So that makes sense, okay? But what doesn't make a lot of sense here is the rest of their lineup, because they have Jonathan Taylor at number 2. Now, Jonathan Taylor hasn't really been exactly impressive to me. I know he started to get more looks there in Indianapolis, but he has been kind of a disappointment for a rookie running back that most people thought would go first be the first running back taken in the NFL draft. Now, he has had 2 excellent weeks of at least 90 yards. And he had 22 carries 2 weeks ago. He had 16 touches last week. So if they're starting to give him the ball more, I can understand how his value is shooting up. I love his matchup too, like this week against Las Vegas, next week against Houston again. I mean, Jonathan Taylor is a must start, for the fantasy playoffs. So if anyone's been nervous about that, don't worry, start him. He is a stud. It's a shame that it's taken this long, but Pro Football Focus has him as the number 2 grade. And I'm not quite sure I agree with that Because number 3 is James Robinson, who was undrafted, let's remember. He came out of nowhere for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's been an absolute workhorse. The definition of a workhorse 3-down running back who does everything that they need. I mean, sure, their team's bad. They have 1 win. But James Robinson has been an excellent surprise. He hasn't posted 1 game with under double-digit fantasy points. He's had touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. He had 6 receptions last week, 5 the week before. I mean, for a dude who's getting 20 carries a game and then also getting 5 receptions, this is Dalvin Cook territory as far as volume goes. And it's from an undrafted rookie running back. Gotta love James Robinson. He's been on a number of playoff rosters, which if you're watching at home, you'll see that that's the next topic that we'll get into. But why I don't agree with Pro Football Focus is because how is James Robinson below Jonathan Taylor? I get maybe Antonio Gibson. Maybe. But James Robinson, to me, should be number 1, if not number 2. Number 4 on Pro Football Focus list, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who I mentioned earlier, for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, he was drafted in the first round. In almost every fantasy draft, he was taken between the 5th and the 9th overall pick. And he's been kind of disappointing for the price you had to pay for him. His best performance was 2 weeks ago against Las Vegas, where he had, only 69 yards, but he had 2 touchdowns. But he's just not getting usage in the passing game like we expected him to. And maybe that's because Patrick Mahomes has so many other targets and so many more creative ways to get the ball to his other playmakers. But we haven't really seen Le'Veon Bell take that much away from Clyde Edwards-Helaire, which was kind of a worry coming in, when he was signed there, or when he was traded, excuse me. But Clyde has not been what we expected. So I get that he's been highly touted. He's only had 1 game or 2 games with over 100 rushing yards, and only 1 game with over 5 receptions. So not exactly the usage that you would like to see from Clyde, but he's on such a potent offense. He's also a must start. I know he's got the Miami Dolphins this week. They're a tough defense. He's got the New Orleans Saints next week. That's a tough defense. But I doubt you have many better options when you took him in the first round. And before I move on, where's J.K. Dobbins on this list? Why isn't he on there? I mean, like I said, this guy breaks off every game. He's getting a 20-yard run. Yet the Ravens give him 7 carries. That is frustrating. And it's been paying off. But you give J.K. Dobbins the same amount of touches that you're giving Clyde Edwards-Helaire or James Robinson lately, and he's a bona fide running back 1, no doubt about it. It's disappointing that the Ravens are still almost refusing to utilize him as they should be. So, really hope to see more of J.K. Dobbins moving forward. I think we will. All right, so we have a comment here. Well, James Robinson should easily be number 2, arguably number 1. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It makes no sense that he's not. But that's Pro Football Focus for you. That's Chris Collinsworth for you. But anyway, here's one of my favorite segments, my favorite things to come out. So every year when the fantasy playoffs start, they release the most common players found on fantasy playoff teams. So the most common players on fantasy rosters. Guess who number 1 is? At 67%. So that means that 67% of playoff teams have this player on their roster. It's James Robinson of the Jacksonville Jaguars, who was not only undrafted in the NFL, but he was obviously then undrafted in almost every fantasy league. Yet he has been the value of James Robinson when Leonard Fournette left has kicked all of these teams that got him for essentially nothing. They probably picked him off of waivers, whether right before the season started or maybe even after week 1 when he was available. 67% of playoff teams have James Robinson on their roster. That's insane. It's the value there. Number 2, at 61%. So 61% of playoff teams have Travis Kelce on their roster. This is something that I've talked about before. The value of having arguably the best pass catcher in the NFL, the most efficient pass catcher in Travis Kelce, being able to play him in your tight end slot, that's getting you 15 to 20 points from your tight end every week. It's invaluable. That's why he's number 2 on this list. Number 3 on the list, Alvin Kamara. Interesting. Because he's actually a first round pick. So you choose Alvin Kamara. His ADP, or his average draft position, was 6.1. So he was taken around the 6th overall pick, which actually seems a little bit late. But it's paid off. I mean, he's Alvin Kamara, dude. Like, he's a beast. Even without Drew Brees, we saw him still get some love from Taysom Hill last week. So it is possible that he can coexist with Taysom Hill. Number 4 on the list is Justin Herbert. Now, this guy wasn't even the projected starter coming into the league, and he didn't start week 1. It was Tyrod Taylor. Tyrod Taylor started week 2 also, I think. And then Justin Herbert came in. So, of course, he was undrafted. I mean, I did draft him in a 2 QB league, but that's a different story. I mean, I had high hopes for him. I took Russell Wilson, Daniel Jones, and then Justin Herbert as my 3rd quarterback. And who would have thought that by week 4, Daniel Jones hasn't played since. For me, on my team, it's been all Justin Herbert. Another undrafted player, and that's where the value comes in. So it's 59% of playoff teams have Justin Herbert on their roster as their quarterback, because that value of not taking a quarterback early, which is something that we talk about all the time. You can wait on quarterbacks because you can find real value in them. The other one I'll talk about, now this is number 6 on the list, is Dalvin Cook. Not really any surprise there. Now, his average draft position, or his ADP, was 5.7. So another guy who was easily taken in the first round of every draft, and rightfully so, because he has been the fantasy MVP. We talked about it with Arvin a couple minutes ago, how insane some of his monster weeks have been. It's every week with this guy. I mean, Dalvin Cook is a lock. Love Dalvin Cook. Some other notable players on this list: Chase Claypool. 55% of playoff rosters have Chase Claypool, who was undrafted in most leagues. It just makes sense. It's the value. Who was going to be that Pittsburgh wide receiver that's going to go off this week? Sometimes it's Chase Claypool. More often than not, it's Deontay Johnson. But more often than everything, it's all 3 of them. It's Juju, it's Claypool, it's Deontay Johnson. It can be all of them. So start all 3 for the rest of the year. Fantasy playoffs, you gotta play guys who are gonna get looks, and those 3 target monsters are all viable plays for the playoffs. The last guy I'll talk about is another undrafted player in Myles Gaskin, and he's been absolutely phenomenal. So Myles Gaskin is on 55% of playoff roster, or 55% of teams who've made the playoffs have Myles Gaskin as one of their running backs. And that just makes sense because he's getting workhorse back numbers. He's getting 20 plus touches a game at a ridiculous price that no one had even heard about. No one had really heard of him coming into the season, or no one expected him to be the lead number 1 back for the Miami Dolphins. But he's been excellent. So I love this list. You can check it out. You can find it, just search for the most common players on fantasy playoff teams, and you'll find it out there. It's just a great way to show that value can be found in the later part of drafts. Like I said, really the only 2 first-round picks on this list are Alvin Kamara and Dalvin Cook. Devontae Adams does make the list here, but his ADP was 16.8, so that's kind of a second-round pick. Makes sense. Devontae Adams, another beast. All right, I want to thank Sports Trading Systems for sponsoring me today, sponsoring the Fantasy Fallout podcast. And I do have just one more topic because NBA season is right around the corner. I mean, Christmas presents. All right, it's 3 days before Christmas, December 22nd. NBA season starts again, and I could not be more excited. I love the NBA. I love basketball. I love fantasy basketball. So what I want to do is break down my 5 must-draft NBA players for this season, for the 2021 NBA season. So here we go. I mean, number 1, Luka Doncic. I mean, what more can I say? He's going to win MVP this year. Book it. Put your bets in right now. Luka Doncic, 2021 Kia NBA MVP. He was the MVP of the bubble. He was the best player in the bubble. Okay, well, I don't want to hear Devin Booker. Yeah, he's good. I love Devin Booker too. But it was Luka. And I think that essentially the bubble was a preview of what next year in the NBA was going to look like. Luka had gotten his development in the prior part of the season, and he had looked good. He looked good. But then there was the COVID break, and everything kind of reset. And then all these teams met in the bubble, and it was like a recalibration. And then Luka showed that he is the future of the NBA. He's my 2021 MVP pick. Love Luka. I would draft him first overall in any basketball league that I'm in. And I plan to, if given the opportunity. Number 2 on my list is Zion Williamson. I mean, like, we only got a brief view of Zion last year, but he's everything we expected and more. I mean, the kid makes plays happen. He's the most efficient player in the league. He plays 15 minutes and gets 20 points and 7 rebounds in 15 minutes. If you play him 30 minutes, he's going to get 30 points and 15 rebounds. It's just going to happen. And the Pelicans' new coach, Stan Van Gundy, just recently came out and said that Zion will not have a minutes restriction to begin 2021. I mean, beautiful. Absolutely love it. Van Gundy also talked about getting the ball in Zion's hands more, letting him drive and dish, which will only improve his assist numbers and also his rebounding numbers. Because remember, Zion will drive and he'll throw up a layup. And if that doesn't go in, which it mostly does because his field goal percentage is so good, he's also the fastest guy I've ever seen who can jump, like throw a shot up, jump, land, and then jump again for the putback. He does it over grown men that have been in the league for years. He does it better than anyone. So I love Zion this year. And when you play him more minutes, he's going to get more. He's going to keep that efficiency and be incredible. Number 3 is Kevin Durant. I mean, people are going to be scared to draft him because of his Achilles injury. And that can be tough to return from. I mean, no one really knows how the body's going to respond. And he's not exactly a young man. All right, but he's had 18 months to recover and rehab from that Achilles tear. So I think he's going to be ready to come back and dominate just like he used to. I mean, he might be a step behind, but I think he'll work that rust off. And I think he's just got a lot to prove. I mean, Kevin Durant always has everything to prove, just to himself. I mean, we know how insecure he is with his Twitter burners and all that. I don't mean to bring that up, Kevin. But he's going to come back. I have a lot of faith in him. I think people are going to be scared to draft him. Like I said, I'm not. So maybe let him fall. Let him fall to the second or third round. Third round, easy. I mean, he better not fall that far. So I love Kevin Durant. All right. And for number 4, this is actually kind of a mix. Like, you'll see where I'm going with here. It's Steph Curry of the Golden State Warriors. Okay. He's the best shooter that we've ever seen. All right. And he missed a lot of last year. He's hungry. He's hungry. I just read a quote from him. He said he's excited to start from ground zero again. You know what that means? That he knows that it's his team now. All right. There's no KD. There's no Clay, unfortunately. So I expect Curry to average over 30 points again this year and to take 10 to 15 threes every game. And I love the Golden State Warriors. I love their chances. I don't care. Yeah, I mean, Giannis, like, well, I'd like to see what happens there. I'd love to see that. Giannis go west. But even if he doesn't, I love Steph Curry to come back, show everyone that this is his team, and it always has been. And on that note, I also love Kelly Oubre, who posted career highs last year in minutes per game at 34.5, career high in points per game at 18.7, and a career high in rebounds at 6.4. Okay, now on this Golden State squad, he's going to be the number 2 or the number 3 scoring option behind Steph. He's going to post another career high numbers in almost every category. I love Oubre's hustle. I love his attitude. Huge fan of him when he was with the Wizards. Very sad to see him go, but if I had to choose anywhere else where he'd be, I'd put him on Golden State and absolutely be thrilled. So I love Kelly Oubre this year, and I think that I would probably draft him in the third or fourth round in fantasy drafts. And just my final point to that, I also like James Wiseman. All right. And he only played 3 games in college last year. So I think a lot of people are going to try to avoid him in the draft because we really don't know much about what he's going to bring. But all right, the dude's 7'1". He's got a 7'6" wingspan, and his standing reach is 9'6". I can't even imagine that. So with Steph Curry out there throwing up threes, Kelly Oubre probably the number 2 option. I bet James Wiseman's the number 3 option. And even if he doesn't get a lot of scoring opportunities, which I'm sure he will, he's going to protect the hell out of the paint. He's going to get blocks with that insane reach. And he's going to get boards. Warriors are going to shoot a lot. And he's going to get boards. So, all right, I've run over time a little bit here. So I'm sorry about that. We have a comment. What about LeBron? Yeah, I mean, sure. What about him? Like, what about him? Well, he's going to be great. He's LeBron. I'm not going to take LeBron over guys like Luka, over guys like Steph Curry in fantasy. I'm not. I will take Anthony Davis because we all know what he's capable of. LeBron, I think I'll let someone else take that. All right, so I've gone over time, but I appreciate everyone out there listening. Much love. Thank you to Sports Trading Systems for sponsoring us. Trade sports like you trade stocks. It's that easy. Subscribe. They send an email right to you. You don't even have to come online and watch me tell you what to do. You can just get an email. All right, so look out for my article coming out later today. Week 14 DFS values. Whatsonsports.com. Look out for Arvin's article where he'll go more into detail about those top 5 fantasy performances. We got plenty of great articles on there, and it's all completely free. And it's all educational. And it's just fun. It's just entertaining. It's a great website. So check it out. Thank you, everyone out there. We've got Thursday Night Football tonight to look forward to. Fantasy playoffs, guys. Got to be ready. Read those articles. Get yourself prepared. We got a big couple weeks coming up. Thank you, everyone, for listening. You're all far too kind.